Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to the Minecraft Survival Guide. I hope you're all having a good day. We're back here at the crater of this mountain where it feels like the deep dark has landed like a meteor in our world and is about to cause chaos. So we're going to head down there back to the deep dark area we were exploring yesterday, but today, no holds barred, we are going into the ancient city, possibly the most dangerous environment down here in the deep dark, full of skulk shriekers, full of loot, but also full of the danger of encountering the Warden. And we're going to go in with much the same approach that we had yesterday. I've got a bed with me so I can set my spawn just in case the worst should happen. I've got a couple of stacks each of the different colors of wool and an empty shulker box that we can hopefully stash all of the loot in. I've also brought some snowballs in case we need to have them serve as a distraction for the Warden. We've got ourselves a silk touch hoe and some shears so that we can mine some more wool once we're here. Because despite the fact that the structure is kind of scary, it's also got a lot of wool here. It gives you the tools you need to make sure that your encounters with the Warden can be survived. But all in all, we're not going in with the intent to fight the Warden today. And I know that's going to be a lot of people's interest. A lot of people are going to be kind of out here for a combat challenge. I don't believe that's really the intent behind these structures, the ancient cities, and even the deep dark itself. I don't think the Warden is really meant to be fought. I think it is meant to be a stealth challenge, basically. The Warden is really there to be avoided, and figuring out how to avoid it is sort of the point here, to me at least, and your mileage may vary on this score. You might look at the Warden and say, I want to fight that regardless of what the developers actually intended, and that is entirely your call. But for me, today in this episode, don't expect me to go in all guns blazing. I'm going to try and play this the stealthy way, and then maybe if I'm feeling especially plucky in a future episode, we will go ahead and raid this thing with the intent of taking on the Warden hand to hand, mano a mano, and see who comes out on top. For now though, we're going to hop down here slowly into the deep dark because I know from experience from yesterday that flying on down here, if we're too close to a Skulk Shrieker, could actually trigger our first strike for the Warden. So we're probably going to end up coming down somewhere over here, making sure that we're not detected by too many Sculk Sensors, and working our way into the structures of the ancient city more slowly. We got incredibly lucky with this environment right here, because this is an ancient city that's almost exposed to the sky. So if we need to make an emergency exit, I've still got my fireworks on my hotbar and my elytra equipped. We're not fully armored up, but we are at least able to make a quick getaway if we need to. And I think the first thing I'm going to do is a similar approach to what I did yesterday. We're going to work our way in, taking out the Sculk Sensors and catalysts and stuff as I go, because those are still pretty valuable to me, and some of them are even being lit up over there in the distance. If I had my spyglass on me, I'd be able to show you. Over there in the distance, there are a couple of Sculk Sensors which were being lit up by a bat nearby, and I'm hoping there's not a Skulk Shrieker near there, because I have a feeling that they wouldn't take too kindly to the bat's interference. But for now, at least, I'm going to sneak on in here. We're going to take out a couple of these Sculk Sensors, and they're going to trigger each other, but for the most part, we should be okay over here. We're down here at Y-51 in the world, and to my knowledge, ancient cities should always generate around this coordinate. So if you are looking for ancient cities specifically, if you've had enough of the regular Deep Dark and you want to come here and find one of these cities, you are looking for this Y coordinate of Y-51. And we're finding a lot of redstone down here. We may even find a few exposed diamonds. For the most part, I'm going to ignore that because, unfortunately, it's not exactly what I'm here for, despite the fact that we'd get a lot of redstone dust out of this. But maybe once the area is a little bit safer, we can come back through and claim all of those resources. Likewise, unfortunately, it's going to be pretty difficult for me to light up this area without tripping some of the Sculk Sensors. And so, until I've taken out some of these, it is going to look a little bit dark on the footage. But I'm going to try and brighten it in a similar way to what I did with yesterday's footage, so hopefully you folks should be able to see well enough down here. Now, despite the fact this looks like a jumble of deep slate bricks and tiles, this is actually one of the first structures we want to investigate, because these kind of ruined towers exist throughout the ancient cities, and there is a ladder here indicating that we can probably come up here to find something. So I'm going to very quickly break down a couple of these blocks here and use those to pillar up and make contact with that ladder. There are also some cracked deep slate tiles, which is something I completely forgot was a thing in my recent explorations of deep slate. We got cracked deep slate bricks there, of course, but there are tile variants of that as well. That's kind of hilarious. Oh, and it looks like up here we have our first Ancient City loot chest right above us, and I should be able to click on that from there, and here we go, folks. We got ourselves some of the loot that you can expect to find here in Ancient Cities. First of all, some amethyst shards, but these mysterious shards of some other kind of substance. These are Echo Shards, and once we have enough of those, we'll be able to craft a recovery compass. A compass which will point to the last place we died, which for me is probably going to be the time I blew up a respawn anchor over near my spawn point, but we'll get to that in future. We'll see if that works out. We also have 2 fragments of Music Disc 5, a new music disc that's been added in for this version, but something that you have to piece together from fragments which can only be found here in the Ancient Cities. There's also an enchanted book here, which is the new Swift Sneak enchantment, so we got really lucky with this first chest, unless they made Swift Sneak an enchantment that appears in all of these loot chests. But for the most part, when I've come down here before, when there's still been placeholder loot and things like that, when they were still working some of the stuff out, I always found different enchantments, and I had a hard time finding Swift Sneak. What that does, if we put it on our leggings, and it is a leggings enchantment for once, is to make our sneaking speed kind of closer to our walking speed. Normally sneaking slows you down a lot, so you end up moving a little bit slower, but if you add Swift Sneak 3, the highest level of Swift Sneak, to your leggings, you'll be walking at about 75% of your normal walking pace, so it actually speeds up sneaking quite a lot, and that can be especially useful for exploring environments like this. Now, you know me, I'm a maximalist. I kind of want to go for the highest level enchantment that I can get when it comes to this stuff, so even though we have Swift Sneak 2 here, and that'd go really well on our leggings right now, I'm going to hold off on enchanting them until we have Swift Sneak 3. Either we get another one of these books, or we get a Swift Sneak 3 book. But as far as our first loot goes, we also got a name tag, we also got some horse armor. I'm probably going to leave both of these in here for now. We can always come back and get them if we want to. But as far as that unique loot goes, we have got our first taste of it right here. Now let's step further into the city and see what's going on. There'll be a couple more structures like this around the outside, but the main meat of the city is really in here. Now, you'll notice that these corridors, these kind of like double-sided corridors, we've got one lane on this side and one lane on the other, these are all made with a floor of grey wool, and that is all 2 blocks thick, or at least it seems to be in these places, and yeah, it does seem to be 2 blocks thick. Okay, so this is once again the Ancient City providing for you in terms of things that can be both a distraction and potentially an aid to stealth. So if you're running around on wool, as we found out in the previous episode, you're not going to be detectable by Sculk Sensors. The Warden, if it spawns, will also have a harder time hearing you if you're running around on wool, and if you're sneaking on wool, you're pretty much as silent as you can be. So this at least seems like a smart move in terms of the way the designers have left some wool around these structures, meaning that you can sneak around these corridors without potentially tripping any of the Sculk Sensors. So as you explore one of these areas, it's also kind of teaching you the mechanics you need to survive. You'll also notice that some of these areas are bridged with temporary looking wooden supports and carpet, and that's also to indicate to the player that you can run around on carpet as well and still survive. You can still manage to muffle your footsteps that way, and the Sculk Sensors being tripped over there are once again being tripped by a bat. So we may have to take some pot shots at this bat to make sure it doesn't get in closer and activate one of the shriekers, although it seems to be flying around near that shrieker and not activating it, so maybe it's only a player that can activate the shriekers after all, and hopefully the bats won't be too much of a problem. Either way, I'm going to hop down here and sneak up into this area, because I think this is really where we want to be next. There is a little side room over here. It's got some stairs leading up to it like this. This seems to be where some of the most important loot is. The loot chests in this area are kind of worth having. And let's see, we have 2 shriekers right here. We have 1 Sculk Sensor, but I'm not seeing too many of the others around. And so I'm wondering, wow, there's a skull in there. Hello. I'm wondering if maybe we can block this off, and frankly I'm considering just destroying that Sculk Sensor, but I might quickly check around to see if there are any other sensors. Looks like that might be the only one, so I think if we break this one with a hoe, we are going to be in the clear. Here we go. Yes, okay, now we should be safe enough to disable these 2 Sculk Shriekers without them alerting the Warden and getting our first strike. Perfect, okay, we got both of them. Brilliant, and we can claim the Sculk Catalyst as well, and as long as there aren't any Sculk Sensors and Shriekers on the other side of here, which it doesn't look like there are, we should now be safe enough to open up these 2 chests either side of this mysterious altar festooned with lit candles and all of that stuff. If we also come down here, if I take a quick look, I don't think there are any sensors and stuff down here. Nope, we're all fine. There is, as I mentioned, a skeleton skull generating as part of the structure, and this is really uncommon. The only other place you will find skulls as part of the structure, anytime you'll find mob heads, it's the dragon head on the front of an end city ship. So the fact that we've got a skeleton skull from this structure is kind of fascinating to me. Either way, we can now open up these chests, and once again, we've got a couple of skulk blocks. We have some compasses, which I believe are really there to hint at the recovery compass recipe. We have Swift Sneak 3. There we go. Fantastic. We've got ourselves the full enchant in a single book, and then the rest of this stuff seems to be mostly lore-related loot, right? There's some spare books in here. There's some soul torches, because this whole area is lit with candles and those eerie blue flames like soul lanterns. We got a few of those candles in here as well, of course. I'm going to leave the rest of this stuff for now, but once again, we can come back and reclaim this anytime we want to. And now in here, we have a quick charge 2 book. Okay, so crossbow users clearly here. Some pretty decent enchants on diamond leggings as well. That's very, very nice to have. A few more amethyst shards and a couple more fragments of music disc 5. So that is 4 out of, I presume, 8 fragments we need to get. I didn't look into this too thoroughly. I'm just going to try and get as many of them as I can. Over here on this opposite side, though, we have another ruined structure. Seems to be free of skulk, and it does have a chest up here towards the top. So let's see if we can climb up here and grab that one. I'm kind of trying to parkour my way around these instead of breaking them up too much, because I do really like the fact that we can kind of explore them without that. Oh, we got a music disc 13 in there. Very nice. Some enchanted iron leggings, a few more amethyst shards, and honestly, the skulk catalysts are going to be worth taking, because those are few and far between in the regular Deep Dark. But I think it's about time that we left those structures behind and moved on. Let's see if there's anything else that we can find by exploring this wool pathway. We've taken care of that room, and I should probably actually go through with the wool and mark off the areas that we have already been, just so we can more easily keep our bearings about where exactly we've been in the Deep Dark already. And just lighting it up a little bit is probably going to help, but I think the red wool is going to say, okay, no go, we've already been through here. I'm noticing a lot of these little shrines around here that clearly are meant to resemble the Warden's face, and also this central frame that really is the centerpiece of every ancient city. Regardless of how it generates, you're going to find one of those at the center, and yeah, potentially we can learn a little bit from those later on. But at the moment, I'm looking at this section here, which seems to be kind of cordoned off, I guess. I'm not seeing a spot where we can very easily enter this. Maybe it's around the back, or maybe I should just pillar up using wool and get in over the wall here. Because once again, we have a couple of Sculk Sensors up there, but we have one Skulk Shrieker down here. So I'm thinking maybe we're going to hop on down, we're going to do our best to stay on the wool, and we're just going to disable this one Shrieker. I think that should be safe enough. Perfect. Okay, and that's right next to a chest here, which, doesn't have the greatest loot after all. We got some curses on those leggings as well, so even if I was in the market for iron leggings, not something I would consider using, really. Looks like maybe there would have been an entrance over on that side. There's a kind of archway leading you down into it. That makes a fair amount of sense. Let's see if we can sneak over and grab these 2 Sculk Sensors. And luckily there wasn't another Shrieker hiding around the corner there. Perfect. And it seems like as far as these massive Deepslate frames go, we're kind of around the back of this one, because around the front we have a row of redstone lamps at the top of these pillars, and those are really there to indicate to the player that if you make a sound near them, they're going to light up. But I want to sneak up onto the wall here, where we can walk around a little bit more freely, and this bridge leads us to the center of this altar. So we're going to place a torch right there. Hopefully that's not going to be detected by anything. Let's sneak our way across here, across this little abandoned mineshaft looking bridge. And now we are really in the heart of the ancient city. There's a Shrieker right up there. There's a Skulk Catalyst right there. This doesn't look like the safest environment to be. And this mysterious Deepslate frame seems to have been partly taken over by a geode. A geode has like glomped onto the side of the portal frame. That's kind of fascinating looking, actually, and I hope that that hasn't destroyed any of the reinforced Deepslate, because these portals are one of the remaining mysteries about ancient cities. Nobody really knows what the intention is here, and the developers aren't saying anything about what's going on here. So it may be that in the future, these are going to be an actual portal, like a nether portal, that will open up to a different dimension or a different area of the game that we haven't seen added yet. Or it may be that they are a misdirect and they lead to something else entirely. We're not entirely certain yet, and we're not going to get answers about that for a while, I have a feeling. But for now, it does make these ancient cities look like something that we will want to return to in future. Now, as far as Sculk Shriekers around here, I think I can be relatively safe. So I'm going to take some of the sensors off the top of this portal here, and we'll break all of the Skulk vein on this, just to make sure that, yes, the Reinforced Deepslate here is really all there. And on this side, I want to break this out just to make sure that, yep, okay, that is at least a complete frame. So the generation of this Amethyst Geode attached to one side has not done anything to destroy the frame. That is good news. I was worried we'd get a situation like we sometimes get with end portals, where if a ravine generates over them in the past, sometimes that leads to the structure of the end portal being destroyed. Seems like that hasn't happened here, which is, at the very least, some good news. Now, once again, I'm going to dance around a little bit here to show you that, yes, the Sculk Sensors around here are lighting up the redstone lamps when we walk near them. And the cool part about that is they're doing it silently. This is something I didn't cover in yesterday's episode because I really wanted to demonstrate it as part of exploring our ancient city environment here. But if you hop up onto the top of these lamps, you will see that the Sculk Sensors are actually embedded in water. And the water is what's making them silent. If you waterlog a Sculk sensor, it doesn't make a noise when you activate it. And that makes them incredibly dangerous as far as players are concerned, because not only will they not make a sound to indicate exactly where they are, you'll kind of have to rely on visual evidence of where they are, but it also makes it possible to conceal silent traps without you ever knowing about them. And that is potentially very risky for players who play in a competitive environment or a PvP server. Got a few more Sculk Sensors to grab around here, but nothing major. And what I'm wondering is, does this little section down here have the secrets that I have heard about? Because in some cities there is a chest up there that has something to eat in it, usually a golden apple of some kind, but no, it looks like this city has generated without that for some reason. Maybe the Skulk took it over. But down here underneath that portal frame, this is one of the most interesting features to me as far as the ancient city structure goes, because this is effectively a redstone testing lab. There are a few experiments in here which are basically set up to show you a few different things about how redstone works. You've got a redstone block that's outputting a signal through a couple of blocks, and this is really intended to show the player that if you pass a signal through a solid block, that the signal will come out the other side, but if you pass it through a transparent block like glass, the signal will not be conducted. It's teaching you some of the basics of redstone that might be a little esoteric, that might be a little unfamiliar to players who are just starting the game and don't have any in-game instruction on how redstone works. You can see that a lectern read by a comparator would produce a redstone signal, and that's really indicating that you should put a written book on here and turn the pages to light the lamp up. The comparator is even a hint at the different levels that you can detect if you have a written book with multiple pages. Over here we have a target block, which if you shoot it, is going to activate the lamp down at the end of there. And in this room we have something that I haven't even done as part of this series yet, as far as I'm aware. This is a pulse extender made using comparators. So once you switch this on and then switch it off again, it takes a while to power down. The signal reduces over time, and every redstone lamp in this kind of snake of redstone lamps here deactivates one after another. This is all super fascinating and is probably something that we will come back to in future. There's a lot of really interesting redstone instructional stuff down there, so if that is your jam and you feel like you want to learn a little bit more about the basics of redstone, then these can be a cool place to go. But for now, let's return to the walkways of our ancient city. And I think from this point forward, I'm going to try and be a little bit more reckless in how I explore here, because I do want to encounter the Warden in this episode, mostly so we can talk about strategies for avoiding contact with it. I'm still going to run around on this wool walkway a lot of the time because that does feel like what we're supposed to do here, but I think we'll trip the occasional Skulk Shrieker here and there as we explore. Yep, we've done that. We've managed to trip a Shrieker down there, and once again the darkness is going to roll in. Gosh, it's so frightening when that happens. Like, not being able to see very far in this game is honestly really quite scary. I do also need to pop down my shulker box and put some of the stuff in here just so we can keep that safe for the minute. And let's wander off through the city. Now, we've got a couple of Sculk Sensors and Catalysts down here, so I'm going to grab those because they're not near any of the Shriekers. And I do also want to make sure that we leave a couple of the Shriekers intact, because I want an area down here where we can intentionally summon the Warden if we want to. I want an area where we can at least be guaranteed a Warden encounter in future if we want to use that for anything, because I have a feeling we might be able to do some cool stuff with the Warden. But from this central hallway that kind of leads up to the main altar where the reinforced deepslate frame is, there are a few bridges that lead out to the sides, and there's some ladders so you can get back up onto the main hallway if you fall down into this kind of moat that's around the outside. We've got a shrieker or two up here. There's at least one next to the Sculk Sensors. Let's see if we can take that out, and yep, there wasn't another shrieker nearby. Okay, so we are still on strike one. Here's another kind of fascinating element. Over here, there is a mound of wool. It sort of feels like a campsite of sorts, like somebody has erected a tent that has collapsed or something like that. But the idea here, I think, is that this is a deposit of wool that you can grab to do what we're doing really with our red and green wool and marking our way around these ancient cities. Like the pathways around here, it's really meant to be an indication that wool is your friend in these areas. So let's sneak on over the skulk. Let's see if we can grab a little bit more of this wool from over here. Not that we need it, of course, but it is kind of cool to have the wool colors that we can grab from the ancient cities themselves. And you know what? I think I kind of need the wood from these as well, because I am short on wood for torches, and even though there's an abandoned mineshaft nearby, it is hanging from the ceiling. Oh, and we're tripping a lot of sensors every time I put down a torch. I don't like that, but I think we should be okay if we make our way to the end here, and it looks like that is the outer limit of this part of the end city. But these structures are huge and sprawling and lead out in a bunch of different directions, and it's really quite interesting exploring these and seeing which paths you are naturally guided down as you explore this area and which paths you're really meant to discover on your own. There's a little pool here. There's a little kind of, I don't know, ritual bathing pool. I don't like it, whatever it is. We've got another one of these altars here. We've got a couple of shriekers nearby, and nope, yeah, we've already... Where was that skulk sensor? It must be hidden underground or something. Ugh. And speaking of underground, these altars are actually some of the only things you can see once the darkness starts to roll in and the Warden has been alerted. Let's continue to sneak around. There is one skulk sensor here. Oh, it's right next to the skulk shriekers as well. Let's see if we can take that out. No, there's a ton more around there. Okay, that was a bad idea. The subtitle said, "The Warden draws close," and that is as close as I want it to get, to be honest, but I also really want the loot from this chest. Is this the point at which we're going to summon the Warden? I think it might be. All right, let's grab that. Yep, we got a couple of glow berries. We got some thorns. I don't even want that enchantment. Okay, and there is the Warden. Okay, so... it might be kind of difficult to see, but I'm pillaring up on top of some wool right now, because that's probably going to be our first port of call when it comes to avoiding the Warden. We want to make sure that wherever it spawns in, we are protected, and I can kind of see it in the darkness there, but I need to get away from wherever the Warden is walking around. And it won't be able to pillar up here to get to us, although I am slightly worried that I've left it too close to some areas that it could just walk up onto my little line of wool here. And it's underneath us right now. It's sniffing for us, but thankfully it cannot hear me moving around on top of the wool, so I'm really just out here to avoid it. Now, another thing we can do is throw a snowball over there, and oh no, it's heard me throw the snowball. That's a concern. The Warden has maybe noticed us, and we want to get a decent distance away from it. It's certainly very good at following me, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to run back down this pathway, which I can barely see at this point. I'm going to try and get further away, and then I'm going to throw a snowball and have it land somewhere near the Warden. Okay, and that should have distracted it to the point where it's not looking for me, it's looking for the source of that snowball sound. And that's something I can use to get away in this direction. If I'm walking on wool the whole time, then hopefully I'm going to be able to get away from the Warden. Let's throw another snowball out into the darkness. Yep, I think we may have distracted it. The most important thing is not to directly hit the Warden with the snowballs that we're throwing, because that is going to make it take notice of you. Okay, right, we've got away from the Warden far enough that the darkness effect hasn't... Yep, no, it's kind of zeroing in on our location. Let's throw one more snowball over here, and it's still sniffing for us, so it's still going to be able to track us down. But I think, honestly, running to the other end of our wool pathway and waiting it out over here is probably going to be a smart move. Yeah, that at least gives us an idea of where we've been and where the Warden currently is, and it looks like it's just hanging out behind those blocks over there. I'll try and take a look with a spyglass, but I don't want to trip anything with the noise of the spyglass. It's trying to sniff for us, but it doesn't know whereabouts we are. And if it's walking off in that direction, then that's a good thing, because eventually it's going to start to get bored, it's going to realize that we are not in that area, and it's probably just going to burrow back underground where it came from in the first place. Now, the beating of its heart has slowed down, which means it isn't super angry with us anymore. We could throw a snowball over there, but once again, if it hears stuff, it's more likely to stick around and try and look for the source of the sound. Whereas if everything is quiet right now, if we're far enough away from the Warden that we don't need to worry about it being a direct threat, then I think we should be able to outlast it, and it will just wait for long enough that it's ready to burrow back down into the ground. But once again, you've seen here how pillaring up has been probably the best strategy that we could do, and then using some silent blocks, these wool blocks that we can take around with us, is vital to making sure that we avoid being heard by the Warden when it is nearby. And there it goes. You can just about see it. If I thought I was going to be able to get the spyglass out in time. It kind of burrows back down into the ground after it is done sniffing around for the player and decides that it cannot find you. So that has been a successful way of avoiding the Warden. And gosh, it's very, very tense for a while, but you're just about able to avoid it if you stay up high, stay on top of wool so it can't hear your footsteps, and try and avoid tripping any of the other stuff around here that's going to detect the vibrations of your movements and your footsteps. Now, this really seems like a situation in which it's going to be difficult to get rid of these two Skulk Shriekers, because we have a sensor down there, a sensor up there, and a sensor buried in the ground. And as we learned the other day, occluding that sensor with wool is going to be virtually impossible, because even if you put a block on top of it, the vibrations can be transmitted through the blocks to the sides. So I'm wondering if maybe we can kind of do the opposite thing and put some wool around the outside of this Sculk sensor here and around the outside of that one there, and maybe we can prevent the vibrations from opening this chest being transmitted to any of the sensors around the outside. Nope, looks like we couldn't. Okay, well, we have the other side disc, so that's something we can celebrate, and the Warden is back. So as you can see, even if the Warden has gotten bored and despawned from our first encounter, we still have a few strikes with the Skulk Shriekers, so that is something we need to be aware of, and hopefully we should be able to successfully distract the Warden using these snowballs. It's going to be sniffing around for us, and it looks like it might have got an idea of where I am. So let's tell it that I'm over there. I think that seems like a sensible thing, and let's start bridging in the opposite direction. This is kind of the way I wanted to go next in the Ancient City anyway, but once the darkness effect wears off, then that's the point at which we will know the Warden is no longer really within our radius, and it's not going to be able to sniff for us. Let's throw one more snowball down there. Yep, that's distracted the Warden all right. This is actually kind of a perfect environment to observe the Warden, if we can guide it out into this big open space. We've got to make sure that we don't just spam snowballs, though, because one of the features of the Warden is that it gets angry at the source of a projectile making noise if it hears enough projectiles within a short span of time. So if we end up throwing a bunch of snowballs over there, it's just going to get angry at the person throwing the snowballs. This feels like a nature documentary right now. I've got my cup of tea and I'm just watching the Warden roam around in its natural environment. See it lumber through the mysterious maze provided by this ancient, forgotten city, left behind by civilizations untold and forgotten. And there it goes, of course. It's entered this little private environment of its own if it's going to despawn. Well, fine, we'll get a look at the despawn animation another time, but man, it's kind of funny that the Warden has evaded us in that respect. It's also really funny looking back at the trail that we have left ourselves. It's honestly really disorienting with that darkness effect placing wool like this. And by the way, for those of you who are obviously, not too keen on the darkness effect, there is now, I believe, a slider for it somewhere in here. I think it may be in accessibility settings. Yeah, here we go. Darkness pulsing. This can control how much the darkness effect really comes through when the Warden or the Skulk Shrieker gives it to you. And I have that set to 100% because honestly, for my personal taste, I really like the atmosphere of having the room go completely dark. The scared feeling that that brings out is really part of the experience for me, but for folks who don't like it, it is possible to dial that down in the accessibility settings if being disoriented like that is a concern for you. I basically used 2 stacks of red wool running around this area, so I think we're probably going to switch to the green wool for now, and we may end up having to revisit that little campsite area that I was talking about, or maybe mine out one of the pathways here if we need a little bit of extra wool. But there is a chest up here which I would like to investigate, maybe disable that Sculk Shrieker before we do. Let's try and get down here if we can. We'll drop down onto a wool platform, and I think we can break this one Shrieker, and hopefully that won't alert the sensors down below. Perfect. Okay, I think we're good. Now we can hop up here, and we can open up this chest and see what's up. We got some more Echo Shards. Perfect. I think we have plenty of those for now. We don't quite have enough disc fragments yet, and honestly, I'm going to take an Unbreaking 3 book. I love an Unbreaking 3 book. One thing to remember here is that falling on wool isn't always going to muffle the sound of your fall, because fall damage itself has that sharp crack sound that is completely unavoidable if you fall beyond a certain point. So I think it's actually going to be worthwhile making sure that you fall slowly here, and oh gosh, we've tripped another Shrieker. Okay, I don't know if the Warden is... Yep, no, the Warden's coming out. All right. Well, we do have a pit of lava down here, so let's see if we can trick the Warden into falling in lava if we throw a snowball down there. Yep, the Warden has taken notice. He's got a little diving board here. Let's see if we can get it to walk into lava. I think that'd be kind of a fun strategy here. And right now, it is literally wading in lava. It moves slowly, but as you can see, the Warden is completely unaffected by being in lava. As far as I can tell, it will not drown in water either, so it looks like the Warden is going to be able to sniff us out no matter what environment it is in. Keeping it in lava might be a good defense against how fast the Warden can move, though, because I've seen it try and pursue players. Once it takes notice of you and it knows where you are, it can be relentless. Yeah, I kind of get the sense that he can't despawn while he's down there in the lava, so we might need to throw a snowball or two to see if we can guide him out of this pit, and hopefully once he's up on a solid block, he'll be able to despawn. I don't really know, but for now, I'm probably just going to wander off and leave him be in his little lava bath. The important thing to note, though, is that there can be more than one Warden. I've been using the Warden the entire time to talk about him, but it's really Wardens, because if you trip another Sculk Shrieker in a different part of the ancient city, if it's a reasonable distance away from the other Sculk Shriekers that have detected you, then yes, it will summon a second Warden. So chances are you might encounter more than one of these if you're unlucky, and if you're especially unlucky, you might end up with more than one of them fighting you at once. So that's something to be concerned about. For now, though, I'm more concerned about what's in this chest, and it looks like we've got more music disc fragments and an enchanted golden apple. Well, that's absolutely fantastic. So nice to have another one of those, and they should be slightly more common down here in the ancient city loot chests. So very glad that we've got one of those from today's trip. We've now got 7 music disc fragments, so hopefully one more chest should be enough, and it seems like the heartbeat from that Warden over there has diminished, meaning it's probably either just naturally despawned from us being too far away, or it's burrowed back into the ground after all. There are so many Sculk Sensors around this little area, but thankfully no more Shriekers, so that's not a concern for us. We can hop on out of here, and let's see if we can find one more loot chest to see if we can wrap up Music Disc 5. Throughout this whole thing, it feels like we haven't covered most of the ancient city, really, and I expect the loot chest and the structures are going to be fairly similar throughout. It's kind of like a stronghold where it generates in a modular way with lots of different iterations on the same sets of rooms and the same loot chests and stuff like that. But I think it may be worth just hopping up in here and seeing what else we can grab from the surrounding rooms, as long as we don't risk triggering another Warden over here. It's also really cool seeing that geode opened up next to the central portal frame. That's super cool. We do have a little room over here with a chest in it. Let's bridge on over with our remaining lime wool, and let's see if we can grab anything from here, or if it's going to be too dangerous. Oh, this one's looking exceptionally risky, to be honest, because we could probably occlude the Sculk Sensors from hearing us opening the chest. But there's one up there, there's 2 up here, there's 2 down there, and 1 at a diagonal from a sensor. In fact, 2 of them are diagonal from the Shriekers, which really makes that one of the more difficult situations, because you can't really occlude the vibrations especially well, especially if they're diagonally downwards like that, because we can't place any wool around that sensor without breaking blocks. So instead, let's go for the wall of wool strategy, where we're just going to place a massive wall of wool in front of this, and hopefully we should now be able to open up this chest without any of these hearing me. Yes, there we go, and we got ourselves a Fortune 3 diamond hoe out of that. That is not too bad. A few bone fragments, some glow berries, and a regen potion. That'd be really handy to have here, actually. Unfortunately, no more music disc fragments, but that's fine because it looks like there's plenty more of the city to explore. Oh, did not mean to do that. Do we have any more strikes left? No, we don't. Okay, I'm off. I'm going to be up here on my tower, I think, and oh gosh, it's on top of my wool bridge. Let's see if we can lure it down real quick, because yeah, I really didn't think about how I was basically building a bridge straight to myself. I think the best thing I can do here is probably to break out some of the blocks of the bridge, and some of those are actually going to drop on the ground. You know what? I also have these bottles of enchanting from the chest, so maybe we can throw those to distract the Warden. Maybe one of those breaking is going to distract the Warden here. I'm actually getting my fireworks out just in case here, because I honestly don't know what's about to happen. I can't see whereabouts the Warden is, and I think it's onto me, but I don't know where it's going to find me. Oh gosh, okay, it's roaring at me. I don't know what that means, so I think I'm gonna try flying, but I don't know where to. Oh gosh, I genuinely cannot see a thing right now. I'm flying blind, and I'm flying at lava. Oh gosh, oh, that's rough. Yeah, I'm really glad this is a big open cavern, because I got the sense that the Warden actually heard where I was. I think I threw a couple of projectiles, and it did end up noticing where I was after that. I think I was maybe a little bit too hasty trying to distract it, and it figured out my location from that. So, to be honest, I think we were better off getting out of there entirely. And down here, I think, if we can very carefully make our descent, crouching the whole way, I think there is just one Sculk Shrieker here that we can disable, and then hopefully we should be able to claim the chest that's up here. Alright, looks like we are in the clear. Man, you really have to tackle these ancient cities like you are defusing a bomb sometimes, and that's kind of an intense thing to be doing right here. But let's pillar up using the Skulk blocks, seeing as I'm basically out of wool at this point, so I think our ancient city adventure is probably going to end around here. We're going to grab these two Sculk Sensors, check that there aren't any more Shriekers around. No, it's just Sensors and a Catalyst. And it looks like, oh, we still don't have, we have another Enchanted Golden Apple. 2 Enchanted Golden Apples in the same chest. Oh my gosh, that is really quite something. And we have another Swift Sneak 2 book, along with a couple of pairs of diamond leggings, which really aren't too bad. At least we're safe in the knowledge that we can open our shulker box here, and we're not going to trip any more Skulk Shriekers. But man, the loot here has honestly been pretty fun. It's kind of nice to get hold of some more Enchanted Golden Apples. We got ourselves the other side disc finally. This thing is super rare, and while it's more common down here in the ancient cities, you can only find it occasionally in dungeons or strongholds. It's about as rare actually as the Enchanted Golden Apples, so I'm so glad we've got hold of that. The Echo Shards and music disc fragments are going to be fun to play around with, and we have more Skulk Sensors and Shriekers, of course, from this mission so far. But I am still so curious whether or not we're going to find any more music disc fragments down here. I think we're probably going to call it quits for now, though, because I'm out of wool. I need to go back and get some more wool, and honestly, I'd like to return here with the intent of actually fighting the Warden for some of this loot, so I think we're going to save that for another time. And from up here on the abandoned mineshaft, I can actually take a look at my route around the city based on some of these bits of wool around here. You can really tell where we encountered the Warden and when we had to run, and I think that's a really fascinating artifact of our time here. We'll be back, I think. We'll be coming back to this ancient city a couple of times, and honestly, if you want to remove all of the Skulk Shriekers from this environment, there's one Skulk Sensor that's like on top of this pillar, and it's being triggered by a bat constantly. That's really quite funny. But if we want to come back here, and if you want to remove all of the Shriekers from this environment, you're basically making it Warden-proof, and since the environment is already mob-proof, this could be a really cool place to set up a base. Renovate one of these ancient cities and turn it into your own personal base. Wouldn't that be a cool idea? I think maybe we'll end up doing that at some point in the future of the series. But folks, thank you so much for watching this episode of the Minecraft Survival Guide. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you were as thrilled and delighted by this as I was. Don't forget to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I will see you folks soon. Take care, bye for now.